Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into something pretty profound, a concept that, well, it aims to be almost like a complete operating manual for life. We are diving into what our sources call the inside-out way.
Exactly. It's really an investigation into how your internal world, your thoughts, feelings, spirit integrates with everything external. The reality of the planet. The sources we've synthesized, they really center on this powerful text, part poem, part philosophy, called The Inside Out Way. It's by Noble Derby LeMoore from back in July 2019.
And our mission here is to really unpack its core idea that you can't truly understand existence if you keep separating your personal stuff from what's happening globally. And this view insists that, the real key to clarity is actually embracing contradictions, those inherent coexisting opposites. It's trying to get us beyond simple answers.
Precisely. And it's not about picking a side, is it? It's about holding maybe two opposing truths at the same time. It's sort of a shortcut, in a way, to grasping this unified worldview. And the journey, it starts with this really foundational statement, sets the whole tone, declares the necessary condition of human life right off the bat.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that because the whole philosophy seems built on this one simple but pretty radical declaration: there is a contradiction.
Yeah.
And that phrase, it's not just saying, oh, things sometimes conflict, it's defining the whole game.
Yeah.
The poem basically says these opposing forces aren't choices you make, but simultaneous realities, coexisting things you have to navigate.
Yeah, what's fascinating there is how the text just refuses to let you put things in neat boxes, compartmentalize. Most of us, we naturally try to push away the negative feelings to make space for the good ones. But the inside-out way says, nope, that's futile. These forces, together, they make up the very fabric of the struggle itself.
And you see that straight away, don't you? In the emotional pairs the poem highlights, they're listed right next to each other. It's like it's demanding you look at them together as unified forces, not, enemies fighting it out. Like anger existing right alongside joy. The idea isn't waiting for the anger to go away before you feel joy.
Right. Or that pairing of sorrow with passion. That one's particularly striking. We often see sorrow as something that stops you. That's debilitating, right? And passion is the fuel that drives you forward. But here they stand together. The implication seems to be that deep passion often comes from deep sorrow, or at least they live side by side.
Okay. So the big takeaway from that list of emotions is, like, avoidance just doesn't work. You have to integrate these forces all at once. Then it gets into those really tangled human dynamics: desire, love, and hate, all grouped together as essential bits of the relational struggle.
Exactly. And then the really fundamental human tension, between doing nothing and actually moving. Fear is listed right next to courage. If you try to completely get rid of fear, you actually eliminate the very challenge that makes courage meaningful in the first place. So the contradiction isn't some problem you need to solve. It's the engine of human progress, maybe.
That makes a lot of sense. It frames the struggle differently, not as winning against negative feelings, but learning how to act while, carrying them. So, okay, having established that our emotional and relational lives are defined by these unavoidable pairs, these opposites, the poem then really broadens the scope, doesn't it? It expands this idea to cover the full, existential inventory of being human.
Yes, this is where it zooms out dramatically. It charts this whole range of existence. The sources mention there are 23 total states of being listed, and we can think of this list as maybe the essential ingredients. They define both the inner life and the outer life. The complete vocabulary for consciousness, you could say.
Right, and this is where it gets really insightful, I think, because the list itself acts like a kind of map. Let's look at the negative end first, the kind of existential burdens that are maybe a starting point for a lot of people. The poem starts heavy. There is war, ignorance, confusion, contradiction itself is listed, entanglement, doubt, and despair. That's quite a list.
And if we look at those through this inside-out way lens,
Yeah.
you could group them, perhaps,
Yep.
as the states of fragmentation.
Mhm.
Ignorance and confusion, they aren't just not knowing things. They're conditions that actually lead to entanglement, that feeling of being totally stuck. Right.
Mhm.
And yeah, contradiction itself is on the list, which just proves the point.
Mhm.
The struggle is one of the fundamental states.
And placing despair, that really deep personal darkness, on the same list as war, which is like the ultimate external darkness. It immediately forces you to see them as maybe different expressions of the same underlying fragmented state, not separate things.
Precisely. And then right after despair, the list just pivots dramatically. It starts charting the internal journey towards wholeness. The next cluster sort of defines this shift towards certainty, towards inner resolve. We move into faith, conviction, certitude, and clarity.
This movement, that is the journey itself, isn't it? It's like charting the path from doubt to conviction or from ignorance to clarity. It's not just a list, it's more like a scale you can place yourself on. If you're feeling doubt internally, the path laid out here is towards conviction, which sounds like a purposeful commitment, maybe more than just intellectual certainty.
That's a really important distinction, yeah. Certitude often implies knowing something absolutely externally, but conviction feels more internal. It's the will to act, despite the contradictions. It feels like the moment the inner struggle starts to, well, resolve itself somehow.
And then the final cluster. This seems to define the highest states of being, the ultimate goals, maybe, for both the person and the world. We arrive at balance, harmony, peace, and finally, liberation.
That sequence, it tells a story, doesn't it? You achieve harmony only after you find internal balance. And that internal harmony seems to be presented as a prerequisite for external peace. Liberation then sounds like the ultimate freedom. Freedom from that constant pull, the paralysis of contradiction and fragmentation. When you look at the whole list, all 23 states from war right through to liberation, you realize this isn't just a catalog. It's a map of psychological and maybe spiritual ascent.
Okay, so this really expansive list brings us right to the poem's conclusion, and it wraps everything up in these very powerful final three lines. It just states, this is the inner struggle. This is the outer struggle. This is the inside-out way.
Yes, and the capitalization there, it signals this is the main point, the central thesis. It really emphasizes this is the final unavoidable truth it wants you to grasp. The inside-out way is essentially acknowledging that your personal emotional struggles, your inner struggle, they are directly mirrored, completely intertwined with the big global societal struggles, the outer struggle. There's just no operational separation between them.
But doesn't that risk Well, doesn't it risk making global problems feel hyper-personal? If the state of the world, like war and entanglement, is directly linked to my individual despair or confusion, isn't that just an overwhelming burden? It feels like it puts way too much responsibility on the individual, the microcosm.
That is the critical point, isn't it? That's the challenge this material throws right at you. But the source material, it doesn't seem to frame it as blame or guilt. It frames it more as shared responsibility. As unity. It's more like saying, if you reduce your own internal confusion and find clarity, you are, in a way, reducing the total amount of confusion in the world. The shift starts personally, but the effect is universal. That seems to be the idea.
And the second source you mentioned, the interior journey, that really hammers this home, makes it super explicit. It talks about a necessary journey within and without, and directly says our experience, our feelings, they are connected to the state of the world. Our consciousness is one with the global condition.
Right. And if we accept that premise, even just to explore it, the implication for you, the listener, is actually profoundly practical. It means if you see massive instability and, say, entanglement out there in politics, society, the inside-out way, tells you to look immediately inward, to check the quality of your own internal balance and certitude.
So, okay, how does this connection actually work then? Is it just metaphorical? The philosophical text that goes with the poem, you said it provides the mechanism, the framework for how the inner and outer talk to each other.
It does. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text explicitly brings in that ancient principle, as above, so below. Now, this concept, it comes from Hermetic philosophy way back. But here, it's presented as the key mechanism for understanding the inside-out way. It's the idea that the macrocosm, the big picture, the world, the cosmos, reflects the microcosm, the individual self. And crucially, vice versa.
Right. But most people hear as above, so below, and think it's purely mystical or, abstract astrology stuff. How do these sources seem to interpret it in a more, maybe practical, psychological way, related to that list of 23 states?
Well, it seems to demand we become mindful of our inner self in the world, because the structure of consciousness is, in a sense, fractal, like patterns repeating at different scales. Your internal struggle, your personal state of, say, doubt and fear, it operates on the same kind of structural principles as the collective state of war and entanglement. So it's maybe less about direct mystical cause and effect and more about psychological resonance, a shared pattern.
Ah, okay. Like an echo chamber, maybe.
If you cultivate internal peace, you're generating that frequency, that pattern of peace, and that contributes somehow to the whole field. So applying this principle lets you connect your own personal phases, like times of intense desire or striving for joy, directly to those bigger global conditions we talked about, like war, peace, or entanglement. Absolutely. The moment you achieve, say, inner clarity about a personal problem, that very moment also represents a tiny reduction in the total ignorance in the world, according to this view. It completely flips the script on how we often think about social change. It makes personal transformation potentially the most potent form of activism there is.
Which brings us right back to those core contradictions we started with. If my life is defined by anger and joy coexisting, then the world must also be defined by war and peace coexisting. Always. So the inside out way isn't a path to get rid of contradiction.
No, not at all. It seems to be about mastering the navigation of it. The goal isn't to somehow live only in the positive half of those 23 states. That's seen as impossible. It's about consciously managing the movement, the flow from the states like despair towards the more elevated states like liberation. And this deep dive, hopefully, gives you that immediate tool, the list of 23 states, to sort of diagnose or at least reflect on exactly where you and maybe the world seem to be standing today.
Okay, so wrapping up. The inside out way is essentially this recognition and then the conscious navigation of all these coexisting contradictions, the whole stack of human experience, where the inner struggle and the outer struggle are basically defined as one thing, all guided by that principle as above, so below. It really reframes personal growth as, well, planetary responsibility in a way.
It certainly does. And the source material leaves us with a really challenging final thought. If our experience and our feelings are, in some fundamental way, the state of the world, then our focus can never be purely external, can it? So we'll leave you with this to maybe mull over. Think about those opposition pairs again, sorrow and harmony, maybe, or war and peace. Which of those 23 concepts do you feel you're embodying most strongly today, right now? And if that internal state is reflected in the world outside your window, what does that signal about the reality you're currently co-creating? Keep diving.